Welcome again. My name's Reed. I am today going to be talking about how much airline pilots get paid, specifically pilots from major airlines. The document that I'm about to show here is located here, and I'll plan to put a link in the video as well. And this is me. I just updated two things, and that's a little bit on the cover page, just this overall introduction to this spreadsheet, as well as the pilot major tab. Really, I'm just trying to go over some minimum pays, trying to and compare a bunch of information on airlines and how much they get how much they earn. For the most part, you can estimate how much a pilot will get paid in a year, as well as flight attendant, by multiplying their pay by 1,000. So if you see this example here, if you get $30 an hour, that's roughly $30,000 a year. So a typical 40-hour-a-week job would get about 2,000 hours in a year. So that'd be if $30 an hour for a flight attendant or a pilot would be equivalent of $15 an hour for a typical 40-hour-a-week job. So I described that a little bit in here, and I talk a little bit about. I think for pilots, the heyday of hiring is over. So if you're wanting to get into this as a job or as a career just for the money, it's going to be slow and hard going. I would only go into it if you really love it and it's something that you just don't think you can live without doing, so to speak, that you love it so much that you will do anything for it. As I mentioned, I haven't updated the flight attendant or the regional pilot tab, but the major pilot one I did estimate. The reason I wanted to update it is because Spirit Airlines just closed down, and I thought I'll do a little bit something just to hopefully help them. Of course, they'll be trying to get any job they can get, and this is a really tough industry. So I'm sorry to the Spirit folks who lost their jobs and anybody else is going to. Spirit was actually a really great company. They were earning a lot of net income. As a percent, their income was really high before 2019 and before. And their company culture was excellent as far as the employee culture. I heard a lot of good things about them. So I do feel for them losing their job, and I wish them all the best in wherever they're going to be going. I talk a little bit about my spreadsheet and what the assumptions and such going into, some of my biases that I know about. And basically, if you are thinking of going to a major airline, I think any major airline is going to be better than a regional in general. Of course, you do risk that you're going to be one of the airlines is going to go bankrupt, or that you're going to lose the job. And for me personally, even though I thought any major airline would be better, I chose to not go to certain airlines based on my sheet that I personally made. I estimated the cumulative pay over 10 and 20 years. You're going to see that in a moment here. And I used the 737 or A320 where I was able to. Sometimes I put a note in if it wasn't. And I just assumed a 5-year upgrade for all airlines to make it easier to compare. But some airlines, they take way longer than 5 years. And for most airlines, I think 5 years is actually probably unrealistic. I could even probably update this to 10 years and make it more realistic. But anyway, I had it at 5 years. That's just what I had. It'd be pretty easy to update that. American, Delta, and United, they all compete on the rates. They all basically match them up to each other, so I use the same rates for all three of them. And they're mainly different on culture, profitability, and other areas. And to be a wide body captain for pretty much any of these airlines, any airline is going to take at least 20 years. So if you're say 45 and older, I would not worry about trying to get to the wide body. I just go to any airline, any narrow body, anything that you could go to. A major airline, I think would be great because you'll have a possibly better seniority, but basically you likely won't get at the wide body anyway, unless you're a first officer on wide body. There's another sheet I made in 2018. I updated it over gross and net income. Like I said, it takes a long time to update these sheets in general, so I just only do them sometimes. Anyway, getting on the major airline pilot tab. I have more notes up here on some of the stuff here, up at the top here, and the formulas and stuff like that, and where I got a lot of the information, most of the information from. As well as these websites, some people give me direct messages by just clicking on one of these cells. You should be able to click on it and send me an update. I think it should work, but it doesn't look like it's working at the moment. But hopefully it's working if you're signed in anyway. I think it should work. You can download this. You can do whatever you want with this sheet. I'm okay with that. Anyway, these were the last updates on all of these, on all the airlines. And let's talk a little bit about what this is doing here. For this information here, like ABX Air, it's the airline, the stock ticker if it has one. If it doesn't have one, if it's a private company, I just put PVT. The headquarters where it's headquartered at. So ABX, ATSG is the stock. Wilmington, Ohio is where it's based. It started in 1980. I put in parentheses a hardship, like Allegiant had a hardship in 2000. A lot of times this is a bankruptcy. Sometimes it's furloughs. It's some hardship. You can kind of get a lot of the hardship information on Wikipedia if you're curious. And then the hiring mins. I try to put some hiring mins, but these are really hard because they change all the time. They're really hard to keep updated. But ABX, for example, usually needs just 1,500 total time, which is basically ATP. Alaska wants 500 turbine time, for example. Then there's my quick take on here, which is I just try to summarize the company a little bit in a couple sentences. This is the starting pay for the first officer. The top pay for the whatever airplane that they operate pays the most. Monthly guarantee, this would be the pay, the minimum pay that you get. 108 times 65 would be the minimum pay that you'd get in a month. Like I said, usually you could just type in 108 times 1,000, and that would be the minimum. That'd be roughly your yearly pay. So that in that case, it'd be 108,000. And because most people will fly or get paid for about 1,000 hours of time. This time on most airlines is from the time the door closes to the door opens. So there's pre-flight time, there's post-flight time, there's a lot of other time that you're just not getting paid for. But that's just how it works. Like I said, 108 in an airline would be the equivalent of about $54 in a typical 40-hour week job. So the minimum monthly guarantee, that will vary based on the company, so that can change. A lot of companies will fly more than that, though you'll work more than that. But in slower times, that's just the minimum that you'll get paid. Then this will be the captain pays. Some of the places I can see an estimated upgrade time, and I did put the average in here as well. These averages, now that I'm looking at, might be not up to date. I probably put the number here of how many airlines I compared, so that if I have the upgrade times, it should have a formula in here. You can click on all these for a formula here. In this case, this is the formula. This should show the estimated total pay over 10 years. Like I said, to get the 1 year pay is really easy, just 108,000. But over 10 years, then it would be based on some calculations that I'll show you by scrolling over. So in this case, you should make at least $1.7 million over 10 years if you're flying for ABX just basically over ABX. That assumes a 5-year upgrade. So that calculation, if I scroll way over here, it doesn't show as nicely here, but it's basically the first 5 years of FO pay times the minimum guarantee per year, and then the captain pay for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The total estimated pay would be over same 5-year upgrade, and then it'd be captain for 15 years. So that'd be about 4.1 million if all of those assumptions were correct, and you're working just basically the minimum. Like I said, it'd be the first 5 years as FO, based on those numbers I have a little bit over to the right, and then captain would be for the years 6 to 20. And based on that monthly guarantee, 65 times 12. And that formula should be, it's a little bit harder to read in here, but F5 would be, F5 right here times 12. Glassdoor, sometimes I use this information here for just to see a bit, I get an idea about how the company culture is. So this is their rating out of 5, what percent recommend it to a friend, how many approve it of the CEO, and I made an average. Basically made a formula to make this out of 100, so I can average these 3 numbers, and then you get an average score here. Number of pilots, if I had it, I either got it from ALPA information on the magazine or from the Airline Pilot Central. The percent of pilots who are going to retire between 2026 and 2035, if I had it, if it shows 0, I don't have the information. And if this is mostly from Airline Pilot Central as well. Sometimes you can Google, or sometimes people have sent me those directly, and I'll use whatever I think is better information. Embry-Riddle has a airline quality ranking, and I try to put that information in here. JD Power has a score for economy passengers. I try to do economy so I could get more information, but they also has business and first class scoring, which I did not use. And then the average net profit between 2004 and 2018. I went back, I used that gross and net income sheet, which I haven't updated for a while, to put that average net profit for the airlines. Our bases, the bases of any of the airlines, I put them in here. They're usually pretty close. Sometimes the airline itself and Airline Pilot Central will be different, and I sometimes put different information depending on what I think is more likely to be accurate. A lot of the companies will put 15% directly into your 401k, meaning of all of this pay here, 4.1 or 1.7 million, you can get paid an extra 15% on top of that. That's going to go directly without you doing anything. It's just going to go into your retirement account. So 15 to 18% is pretty typical for these. And then I have other purposes, their slogan if I found it, the hiring page, ABX Air, Airline Pilot Central link, Glassdoor link, and Wikipedia link, which all of these have a lot of what I thought was good information. And these are the pay scales of what the FOs make or what the captains, and this tries to be the average of these, but I just added 2 airlines, so this might be an average of 2 less than what actually shows up here, but this is about the average that it shows up. And this would be the top pay of the biggest airplane, the best paying airplane that they have. Captain pay does a similar thing. Captain Max will be the same, the highest paid airplane. And then the same retirement numbers from 2026 to 2038 if I have them, but I only average 26 to 35 because those are a little more common numbers to get. But these are hard to find. These are hard to get. And like I said, I only do publicly available information. I don't put my personal company that I fly for, and I don't share that either. Let's see here. ABX Air was a small cargo carrier. You can kind of see some of the information, a lot of the information here. And I don't think I'm going to talk too much about these airlines in general. I put a lot of the information in summaries in here as well as the bases, but I'll talk a little bit about how I use this information personally. Glassdoor rating, and I'm going to show, and I'm going to scroll down to the Spirit just for information. I did not update this, but this was about what you would be earning here right before it went bankrupt. But personally, I use things like the Glassdoor information to have an idea of how this company works as a place to work. So the better than average, of course, typically will be a little bit more happy employees. But this was about average as far as companies go that I've compared. So right up to when it went bankrupt, it's still doing pretty good. Had a large number of pilots, and sadly, 100% are now out of there. It's ranked a little lower. I think there was like 9 or 10 or something like that. So it's ranked a little lower here. Embry-Riddle. The JD score was a bit low as well for the passengers. And the JD score is one of the things that concern me about Spirit, because from my perspective, I thought if a passenger is not very happy with the company, they're just doing it because it's the cheapest way, and if they could afford something else, they will go somewhere else. They also had a high percentage of new customers. Spirit did. Something like 25% of customers are new to Spirit, which in my mind, I took it as that means a lot of people are not wanting to fly them again. A pretty high percent are not wanting to fly. And it's hard to keep getting new customers if you're not getting repeat customers. And unfortunately, it went bankrupt. You also see they had a good amount into your 401k. So I wouldn't worry too much about the exact percent. Some of them are just super low, is basically what I've noticed. Like this here, Western Global, it's up to 2.5% of your 401k goes into your 401k, and that's up to. It's not direct like this. UPS is 12% direct, and then they also have some pension. So this is pretty low for retirement. It's a small company, and it's significantly less pay, especially when you're considering the 401k. Let's see here. Retirements. I'll notice here, American might be an easier way to show that. American, about 40% of the pilots will be retiring over the next 10 years. So that means you're going to have an incredible seniority progression at American as long as they stay in business, of course. You never know which one is going to go out of business. Let's see here. I'll compare that to Delta, which is about 27%, and United, which is about 32%. So in order, it'd be American, United, Delta for seniority progression, predicted seniority progression. I compare those three because those three are commonly compared to each other as basically direct competitors. But like I said, you'll have incredible seniority progression at American, but their employee satisfaction is a little lower, for example, on this one. So folks may not be as happy with the management, and that's what I've heard a lot about American, but your pay could be incredible working there. So I talked a little bit about Glassdoor and how I use that information, a little bit about the retirement percentages. Bases, I didn't really talk about that. So bases, I would mostly find pretty much above all else a company with a base that you would be willing to work at, to live in, to move it to. Either drive. Some people drive up to 2.5 hours is what I've heard. If you're within 2.5 hours of the base, your life will be much better. Of course, you do want an airline that's going to be sticking around for a while. Good progression is nice. Good income, of course, is nice, but at a certain point, you're making so much money that it doesn't really matter whether you're making 4.7 or 6.1 million in 20 years is kind of becomes irrelevant, in my opinion. I currently earn more than I spend by far. I save about a third of my income, and it's not really an issue. Any of these companies are going to give you a good quality of life. Let's see here. There's one more thing I felt like I wanted to talk about. That was that profitability percentage. And this is out to date. I would like to update that, but I'm not making any promises on that just because it's pretty time intensive to update anything. But the profitability percentage is good to know because it kind of has an idea of how the airline what the chances of it going bankrupt are. But it's also not very good information in the sense of you still got to use your own critical thinking, because something like Allegiant, for example, is 9.8% quite profitable, and American shows unprofitability, and that's because American in 2011 went bankrupt. In that year, they just dropped a bunch of money. Basically, it shows a huge loss for that year. In Spirit, like I was saying here, it was about 4.2% average net profit percent. And some of the years it was quite good, and they went bankrupt. So it's not a perfect predictor, but it's just a little bit of information, added information to try help give it a better idea of the airline you might want to work for. So this is kind of how I use the spreadsheet. Hopefully it helps out anybody who might be looking for work or who got laid off or lost their job. Like I said, for all the Spirit pilots, I apologize about your struggle. It's a struggle, and something I worry about, because if I lose my job, for example, I don't know what else I'd do. I'd be doing retail, I think, or I'd be competing against entry-level jobs, because this is so specialized. I heard a lot of people going back to roofing in 2008 during those hard times, or construction, or sales, car sales, all types of different things. But these are the hiring pages. I did try to update all these links. Like I said, I just updated it this month in May. When I'm recording this video, I'm going to release it on June 1st. It is the end of May here. It's about a week it should be released. But should have hiring links anyway to help make it a little easier to take a look to see if they're hiring or not. A number of these companies, like Alaska in Southwest, off the top of my head, they have hiring windows where they open and close their windows where they hire. And it's just, you got to basically sign up for their emails to make sure that you get notified when they do open up their hiring window. Hope this helps anybody. I wish you all the best. And if you have any questions, you can certainly leave a comment. Or you can also, if you have an update, you can click on one of the cells. If you're logged in, it should be able to send me that there's an update somewhere, or some wrong math or whatever it is. Should send that over to me so I can update it. Thank you. Have a good day.